Hi friends, welcome to First Edis YouTube channel. This is part 43 in Azure Data Factory Real-Time Scenarios playlist. In this video, we are going to discuss about how we can write a dynamic expression for a SQL query inside a data flow that has to take some value from the pipeline and add single quotes to it. So you may be not understanding this requirement, right? Let me practically explain you that. So whenever you try to pass some value from your pipeline to data flow, and inside the data flow when you try to write a dynamic expression where you have to use a single quotes, then you will always end up with some issues actually. So let me practically show you that. So let's assume I have a table here called a demo table. So let me execute select star from demo table. You can see there are two rows, id, name, watermark. So let's assume I want to execute this kind of query where I am trying to see this watermark column value, right, which should be like a greater than or equals to 19th September. If you see, there is only one row which is greater than or equals to 19th September. So if I execute this entire query here, it is going to give me only one row. So how to do that? So this is what we are going to see. Dynamically, if you want to do the same thing here, right, it is a hard-coded value, it will work fine. So let's assume inside a data flow, if this value you try to supply from a parameter, then how to do that? Because here you need to use some single quotes here, right? So that's where always the issues will come. Let me practically show you this. So let's go to my data factory. So I have already opened my data factory here, and here let me try to create a new pipeline first. And in the new pipeline, let's assume I am getting this value, right? Let's try to take this value, first row value. So let me execute this query, and let's try to take this value. This is 9th September and second row is 19th September. So let me take this value, and I want to take rows from this table where the watermark column date time value is greater than this one, something like that. So in that case, this value will be written, right? So let me copy this. Let me show you what I mean to say here. So if I use this value here, which I just taken right from here, 2022 0909, then 17. So here what I will do, 2022 0909, okay, and then 17th hour, 20 and 10 seconds. That is fine. And if I use it here like greater than, so give me all the rows from this demo table where this watermark column date time column value is greater than this value. So in that case only this second row should return. Why? Because this value equals to this value and there is no equal to symbol. We are taking only greater than rows. So only the second row should come, right? So let me execute this here. So if I execute this here, I can see only second row is coming. So what I will do, I will try to take this first row value for the row Mahir, where name is Mahir, right? Whatever the date is there, let's try to take that using a lookup activity and then pass that value into a data flow dynamically, and let's try to write this entire SQL query in a data flow in a dynamic fashion and see what the issue usually we will end up. So let me go here, and here let me minimize this, and let's try to take a lookup activity here. So let me try to take a lookup activity, and inside a lookup activity I am going to settings. So I have already created one data set which is pointing to some table in the same SQL database. This is pointing to employee table, that is fine. Anyways, we are going to write a query, and in this query what I am going to do is I am going to write a query which will take this watermark column value of this particular row Mahir. Okay, so let me do that. So here, so if you want to take a watermark column of Mahir, what you can do, you can write like select watermark, right, from DVO demo table where name column value equals to maybe like Mahir. Okay, so this is going to give me this value, and this value I am going to use it in the select query where using this watermark greater than condition. Okay, so let me execute this query first and see whether this will give that value or not. So it is giving, right? So let me take this entire query into data flow, sorry, in the data factory, and inside this lookup activity I am using it for uh, uh, for a query option here. So if I run this lookup activity now, I am going to get only that watermark column value where first row, from the first row where name is Mahir. So let's wait for the lookup activity execution to complete here. See, lookup activity execution completed successfully. Now if you see here, it is giving me this watermark column value, right? So this date. So now let's assume this date I want to pass it into a data flow, and inside a data flow I want to generate a query what I am trying to show you here. So this query. So let's try to do that. So let me go back to our data factory, and here let's try to add a data flow first. Let's try to add a data flow activity here, and then let's connect this lookup activity with the data flow activity, and then let's go to the data flow activity. Let's try to create a new data flow here, and inside this data flow let's try to add a source transformation, and here let's try to select a data set, similar data set where it is pointing to the employees table. Anyways, we are going to write a SQL query now. So this data set is pointing to employee table, that is fine. The query what we are using it here is matters here. So if I use this query, whatever I just now shown you, right? So I am just copy pasted this query as it is here, where watermark column value greater than, if I show you this greater than date time, then I hard coded this value. Now if I try to go to the data preview, and if I preview, it will work. Why? Because anyways the data is hard coded there, it will work. So let's wait for the data preview to happen here. Great. See, we got the second row where Wafa name is there and everything is fine. But what I want is, I don't want this query to be hard coded here. I want it to be dynamic. So what I will be doing inside a data flow, let's assume there is a parameter called maybe watermark. Okay. So this parameter is a string type, and to this parameter I will be supplying that date value from this lookup activity what I just now shown, right? This lookup activity giving me this watermark column value, right? I want to supply this value into that query so that that query runs. So to do that, what I am doing, I created a parameter here, and now if I go to source, and here let's try to remove this entire query. Let's try to add dynamic content, and let me paste it here. So here we need to pass that value dynamically. So this is the way, right? So usually what we will do, we will try to generate a string dynamically, which will be almost like a replica of this particular query. So to do that, what we will be doing it, maybe we can, like, let's try to use single quote here, select star from table name where watermark value, till here everything is fine, so we can keep it. So until comma, right? After this, what we want our parameter value. So let's assume our parameter is going to hold that value. Okay, so this value, right? Let's assume our parameter is going to hold this value. So let's add that. Then let's add another plus sign here, and then close that bracket for that particular convert function, right? So let me paste it here. So if you closely observe what I did, I tried to generate a string which will dynamically replicate this query, and instead of hard coding this value, I am trying to use this parameter here. And now if you closely observe what my parameter is going to hold, so let me click save and finish here, and then let's try to add a sync transformation here, just to make sure this data flow works good. So let me add a sync transformation, and inside a sync transformation let me load this data into some output folder of a data like gen2 storage, that is fine. So where we are loading is not a matter here. So now if you see here what we did, we added a source transformation, we added a dynamic SQL query here. If I show you this SQL query dynamically once again, so it is the same query here. This is a parameter value, and this parameter value I am trying to supply from my pipeline. And from where I am trying to supply, if you see this lookup activity output JSON, from here I want to supply, like under the lookup activity, then first row dot watermark. Okay, so this is where I want to supply. So now let me try to keep these property names. Remember these property names. Under first row, watermark is the property name in which you have that value. So to supply that value, what usually we will do, we will go to here data flow, and we will go to parameters. So for this watermark parameter, what is there inside a data flow, right? There is a parameter inside a data flow, right? For that parameter, we will try to supply a value here using a pipeline expression. And from the lookup activity first row, there is a property called watermark in which we have that date. So let me hit OK. Now let's try to execute this and see what will happen, whether it will run successfully or not. It will break actually. Why? I will explain it. So let's wait for the execution to complete here. See, lookup activity completed successfully, and if I see the output JSON of the lookup activity, I am getting this date perfectly, no issues. Now if I see the data flow input JSON, in the input JSON what it is supplying, let's click this data flow input JSON, and if you see here, it is adding a single quote as well. If you see, single quote, then value, then single quote. So it is doing everything good. So we will assume that okay, this along with the single quotes, this entire value will go and it will replace this particular portion in the query, and it will run, right? If you see the data flow also, see, it failed. Why? Because let me do one thing. Let me go to inside a data flow, and if I go inside a data flow as you were assuming, so it will work. So if you go here, if you go to the source transformation, so you might be assuming that single quote value will get replaced from here to here and it will work, right? But that will not work. Why? Because in the data flows, whenever you supply some value from your pipeline, and if that value contains any slashes or single quotes or anything, and you want to make sure to append some single quotes or slashes, then you need to escape it. So my requirement is, if you closely observe this data flow, if you closely observe this query, what this entire thing is going to generate is, let me copy from here to here one string, right? It is going to take this one. So let me open a notepad. So that entire expression is going to generate a query something like this. So from here to here, then inside this parameter, whatever the value, that value it will take. So inside that parameter, what value you will get? If you see this lookup activity output, so if I go to lookup activity output here, it will take this thing. So let me go to lookup activity output. It will take this thing. Let me copy this, and then if I go back to data flow, if I go back to that query, so after this parameter value, then it will directly take only this closing bracket. Let me copy this, and then let's go back here. So if you see here, this is the query it is generating, and if I take this entire query to the SQL, and if I try to run this query here, it will definitely break. So let me practically show you that. So let me paste this query here, and then if I try to execute this query, it is going to fail. Why? Because it was not properly formatted. So we need a single quotes here. So we need a single quote something like this, then it will work, right? So let me execute this here by pressing F5. So it is work. So now you might be thinking, okay, so single quotes are missing, but if you closely observe whatever the value it is passing into data flow, if I go back to pipeline execution, and if I see inside a lookup activity, it is giving you the value without single quotes, but when it is supplying the value into the data flow, it is adding a single quote. See here, it is adding a single quote. So that means single quotes are going inside, my expression. Then still why it is not working? The reason is this single quotes will go inside the expression of the SQL whatever you were using before, but that will interact, that is going to break the existing syntax of the string. So what will happen, if I go back to the data flow once again, so what will happen, as you are assuming the single quotes may be coming here, right? So if I open this query once again, so what will happen, this entire thing, right, from here to here, it will get replaced with that single quote something like this. So let me remove this. So that entire thing will get replaced something like this. So this value it is coming with along with the single quotes, right? Let me take this single quotes along with the single quotes. So from here to here, it will take this kind of entire value, and it will replace, in your parameter place. The moment it replaces is, if you see here, there are two single quotes, and then another single quote here, another single quote here. So this entire syntax is wrong, right? And it will break. So that is the reason you will end up with error in whatever by the class. So how to avoid that? To avoid that, what you need to do, always make sure, so you want to supply values along with the single quotes, right? You need to make sure this single quotes to be escaped with the backward slash symbol, something like that, so that this backward slash symbol make sure to escape the single quote when it is going to append this value into the dynamic expression. So let me practically show you that. So if I go to here, if I go to data flow, so here when you are passing that activity output, so try to append this escape character, single quote. So this is the escape character to get the single quotes, right? If you know C# or any programming, so usually if you want to get a single quotes, you need to escape something like this. So you might be knowing it, right? So if I let me zoom this here. So what I'm doing for backward slash single quote, and then I will be using this at the rate symbol from here to here, it is an expression, and then again append this backward slash single quote. So this will make sure to add these single quotes properly by escaping them, and then try to concat this entire thing into the dynamic expression of the SQL query, and make sure your query runs good. So let me click OK now. Now if I try to execute this entire data flow, it should work. So let's hit this debug execution button to start the execution of my entire pipeline. So firstly we are executing a lookup activity. So let's wait for the lookup activity execution to complete here, and in the lookup activity output JSON we got our watermark column value, and then if you see the input JSON of the data flow, what is happening, this is along with the slash single quote we are supplying. Don't confuse why there is another slash came here. The reason is this another slash will come automatically with the by the data factory into the output JSON, just to escape them and to make sure the designer is not break. So wherever you see the slashes, that one more slash will be appended automatically by the data factory when it try to present the data in the output or input JSON. So don't worry, but actually what is getting supplied is slash single quote, then this data, and one slash again, and then one single quote. So that's what it will get passed into a data flow. So if you see there is still some error. Okay, so that error is because I feel there is one single quote is missing here. So better what we can do is, let's try to create one variable here, and inside a pipeline this variable name, let me name it like maybe like watermark variable. Okay, and then let's try to use a set variable activity here, and then from the lookup activity what I can do, let's try to do that forward slash and single quote thing inside a set variable first, and then supply that variable value into data flow. So from set variable to data flow, and inside a set variable activity, let's try to set a value for a watermark variable, and here what I will be doing, slash single quote, then at the rate, and here let's try to take this lookup activity first row dot watermark, right, then again slash single quote. Okay, so let's try to use this expression here. Let me hit OK, and now let's try to execute this query, execute this entire pipeline, and see what will happen. So what I am doing, that manipulation of the string I am doing using a set variable now, and once the manipulation happen on top of the date value, that value let's try to supply into a data flow. Oh sorry, I need to change here also. So let me go to pipeline expression, and here instead of using all this manipulation, simply use this variable watermark variable. So this variable holds that manipulation details. So let me cancel this execution here, cancel recursively, and then let me re-execute this entire pipeline once again. So let me hit this debug execute now, and let's wait for the execution to complete here this time. Okay, so now if you see lookup activity, okay, so lookup activity output JSON we have to see, right. So lookup activity output JSON got date value properly, this is fine. And then if I go to set variable, it set that slash single quote correctly, this is also fine. And then if I go to data flow input JSON, okay, now it is good. See here, slash single quote here is also there, slash single quote here is also there. Now you might be wondering why there is another single quote at the starting and at the end. That will automatically come by default. I can show you that as well. If you go to the data flow, sorry, no need to go inside a data flow. So if you go to the data flow settings tab, parameters tab, and if you see here, there is some expression, some checkbox. If you don't check that box, then it is going to append that single quotes automatically. Okay, so that is part of the design. Don't worry about why that extra single quotes are coming. That will be ignored automatically when that value is supplied into a data flow. And if you see, data flow execution also completed now successfully. And why that magic is happened? Why? Because we make sure to take that date value and try to add this single quotes here itself. And when we are adding a single quotes here, we are making sure to escape that single quotes using this backslash. Why that escape is required? If you don't escape it, then as I said before, that entire dynamic expression whatever you return for a query inside a data flow is going to break. This entire expression string is going to break, right? So why it is going to break? Why? Because it is going to replace here that date value along with the single quotes. So it will come like this, single quote, then it will come like 2022 hyphen 09 hyphen 09 hyphen T17. So all that date, right, whatever you are seeing, so it will come something like that, which is going to break this entire query actually. So make sure, so the conclusion or the point to be taken from here is, whenever you try to execute any data flow where you are dynamically building some expression as a query or a SQL query or something, and in that expression value or in that data flow dynamic expression you want to supply some parameter with some single quotes or with some slashes and all, then make sure you escape them using this forward slash as I was doing it here. So if you escape them properly like how I was doing it here, then you won't end up with any issue, or else you will be ending up with that issues. So that's it in this video. I hope you got it what I mean to say. If it is little confusing, you can try to repro this scenario whatever I explained. That will give you better idea. Thank you for watching. Take care.